Is saffron the answer for ADHD? If you ask me, then the answer is yes. My name is Chantelle, most people call me Shan, and I'm the CEO of an international neurodiversity coaching and training company called Neurodiverse Life. I come to you with over 20 years experience in supporting children, teens, adults and families with a whole host of neurodiversity needs and conditions, though I specialise in ADHD. I'm an ADHD coach, corporate and educational trainer, conference speaker. I have extensive professional qualifications in psychology, education, neuroscience, neuropsychology, and a real keen interest in neuroplasticity, as well as several qualifications in various therapies, namely MCT, DBT, and CBT. I'm a really passionate neurodiversity advocate with over a 20-year history of employment spanning across education, neurodiversity, law, mental health, and the public health realm. My resume includes roles such as being a mental health and wellbeing manager, a PSHE subject lead, assistant SENCO, working in school governance, PSHE framework development officer, where I designed the PSHE curriculum for Portsmouth in England. Basically, I eat, sleep and breathe the ADHD and neurodiverse world, and very much consider my life's purpose to be to support the progression of ADHD, education and knowledge for the future generations of ADHD. However, I was not born the CEO of Neurodiverse Life, nor was I born an attorney, an educator or a coach. My beginning was completely different. I was born more than 40 years ago, when ADHD was still widely known as hyperkinetic disorder, a term that originated in the 60s when many facets and traits of ADHD were misunderstood, mislabeled and misdiagnosed. Back then, neurodiversity as we now know it was unheard of, and the little of what was known was wildly misunderstood. As a ring of fire type ADHD identified in research I undertook with the Institute of Psychiatry in London in 2008, which involved brain scans and digital imagery, which actually took part of various studies at the time, I now understand why my ADHD was so outstanding even back then. You see, there are actually multiple different types of ADHD, not just the two most commonly known, ADHD and ADD, that we hear of today. As a baby, I was non-verbal until the age of 4. I would have wild tantrums, scream for hours on end and become exceptionally destructive, even bang my head on the walls on the floor. I experienced night terrors, sleep paralysis, and a long host of other ADHD sleep-related disorders. Psychologists came and left from my home. My mum was branded an unfit parent and me a naughty child. See, my type of ADHD was really explosive, hyperactive, hypervigilant, and as I began to talk, hyperverbal. As a child, I was very, very challenging. Back in the day, so little was understood about what we now call ADHD that there was no solid guidance or advice for parents or practitioners that could provide anything fruitful for my untamable rage, other than good old-fashioned punitive measures and the odd dietary change, which in itself seemed like a form of punishment. I was classified as feral, uneducatable, irrational, and in fact my nickname became the radioactive child. In my teen years, alcohol entered the picture. At 13, I would escape the house in any which way I could, even if it was to walk the dog, and I would come back hours later, inebriated, chaotic in body but calm in mind. Along with alcohol came other substances, anything that offered the fog I craved to soothe the fury of my mind. Hence, the exceptional correlation between the ADHD brain and substance abuse. Despite the highs and the lows, my non-verbal younger days were far behind me. I was an incredibly intelligent young adult with a real thirst for knowledge, yet my brain was inept to process and receive written words. Imagine a sponge ready to absorb, but completely unable to retain anything. It was even more frustrating because this inability to retain information only served to reinforce to people how uneducatable I was. As a result, I quickly learnt that throwing the odd chair or trash in the desk or the classroom or any kind of threatening behaviours would get me a one-way ticket out of the confines of a school scenario. I was out of school by the 9th grade, alone, isolated and completely misunderstood. Fast forward to my life at 18, I had been out of the education system for almost 4 years. I'd overcome self-harming behaviours and an eating disorder. I was still self-medicating to appease the day-to-day shift of the ADHD fog fury in my mind. I had my son at 18 years old and he saved my life. I embarked on a new educational journey. Though I was still struggling, I learned how I learned. I ended up being, at this point in time, wrongly diagnosed with bipolar and incorrectly medicated, which actually nearly cost me my life. I was eventually referred to what was then the only ADHD clinic in the UK, which was the Maudsley Hospital in London, where I met an incredible consultant called Stefanos Mostasos, who, along with a newly termed severe type ADHD diagnosis, offered me the opportunity to take part in various research studies, the brain imagery I mentioned earlier, along with randomised omega trials, which I later learned I was in the placebo group, so not much to report there, and also a huge study on blood groups that identified a gene for ADHD. With this early adulthood, new termed ADHD diagnosis came the medication, and whilst I swore by it for years, and it helped me accomplish so much, it came with such a hefty price over time. The side effects I experienced were horrendous and became increasingly unbearable over the years. Living a lifestyle of taking amphetamine in the morning to function and antipsychotic medications at night to sleep caused me a whole host of other medical issues. I lived off one meal a day, I had barely any appetite, I had severe dental issues, a heart murmur I hadn't had before, kidney problems, and eventually medication-induced psychosis. And that is not including the rebound hour, the bit that no one tells you about. That's where the medication wears off. And after hours of having a synthetic filter, you are thrown into the chaos of an unfiltered tsunami of stimuli, overwhelming feelings and aggression, because the medication has now stopped. Living this way and experiencing the detrimental effects the medication had on me was one thing. But as I saw the side effects with the families I work with, and in particular, the children that I saw in schools and worked with and their tender and developing selves, I became obsessed with finding and seeking out alternative options for addressing the symptoms of ADHD in natural ways. And this, my friends, is how I discovered Saffpro. Now, before I continue, it might be really useful for me to share something really shocking with you about ADHD diagnoses. And that is when people come to me for ADHD coaching and they tell me they've got ADHD, and I'll say, great, you're in the right place, what do you need? And they'll tell me a bit about their lives, and I'll ask everybody the same question. I'll say, what is ADHD? About 99% of my client base can't give me the reason to this. Now, I know that sounds crazy, right? But the reality is that most countries diagnosing people simply diagnose ADHD and discharge without support. Whilst medication might be offered, no post-diagnostic care or therapeutic coaching is. Nobody sat down and told what ADHD is, how their brain works, and how to live their life. I therefore often ask my client base what they know about ADHD, and most of the time, no one can articulate exactly what it is. How many of you were told when you were diagnosed at the point of diagnosis and what it is and what actually happens inside this brain? How many of you received post-diagnostic education, information or support? Exactly. And isn't that frightening? A significant proportion of people throughout the globe fit criteria for ADHD. It's neither rare or curable. Yet despite this, millions of adults take high-strength methylphenidate medications every day. And worse still, millions of parents give millions of children the same, with just as little information and education on the medication as they do the condition itself. So let me allow you to fill in the blanks. What is ADHD? ADHD takes place in a part of our brain right here in the prefrontal cortex called executive function. Our executive function skills need two chemicals, dopamine and norepinephrine, in order to run 8 key areas essential for 8 key life skills: time management, organisation, emotional regulation, working memory, task initiation, so the ability to start and finish and switch between tasks, adapting to change, and metacognition. Essentially, everything that people with ADHD struggle with. After I developed an intolerance for ADHD medication, I'd been on it for 15 years, I took a 6-year break and I tried to come back to it. I was exceptionally intolerant. I came across some academic research that identified saffron as being just as beneficial for ADHD as ADHD medication insofar as it raises dopamine and norepinephrine in exactly the same way. Not similarly, but exactly the same. I went headfirst down a 3-week rabbit hole, poured over 40 scientific research studies showing the positive, impactful and immeasurable benefits of saffron. Saffron in itself contains amazing antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties that are simply fantastic and essential for our well-being. But saffron has properties that raise the dopamine and norepinephrine levels in the brain, which essentially is doing the same. It also raises serotonin and melatonin levels, so our happy hormone and our sleep chemicals, completely naturally. In both my annoyance and relief, I took to social media and posted a video with one sentence, and that sentence actually went on to change my life. Why isn't anybody talking about saffron for ADHD? I provided all of the information I'd learned on the plethora of benefits from saffron, along with loads of information about how under-addressed this was as a potential future alternative treatment. However, little did I know about the incredible production process this involves. To this day, saffron is still harvested by hand. This miracle flower that is known as the Crocus sativus actually takes 150,000 hand-picked flowers to produce 1 kilogram. Now, given how long they take to grow and harvest, this makes 1 kilogram of saffron almost $10,000. Days go by and I'm still ruminating over the fact that there isn't a natural alternative ADHD treatment that I can afford. It is available, but it's unaffordable. And it seemed impossible to fund. And a ping went off on my phone. It was an email from a saffron production manufacturer based in Miami, who had seen my post and was really keen to see how their product would affect my ADHD. That person was Yaron, that product was Saffpro, and that email changed my life. After some research into the Saffpro products and the company, I understood that this was the world's first 100% pure saffron gummy. I was so intrigued to receive it, although both professionally and personally, I didn't think it was going to do any good. I mean, I was 41 years old, an ADHD coach with severe type ADHD, and I have spent thousands over the years on natural aids and supplements. I didn't believe that there was one. So I didn't expect very much when I started taking it. I didn't expect it to be groundbreaking or revolutionary. My first thought as I ate the first gummy was, if nothing else, they tasted really, really good. And truth be told, I could have consumed the whole bottle there and then, if not for the jelly beans on the counter that completely distracted me. A week went by and I thought absolutely nothing of the gummies. I'd left them by my mobile phone at night, so when I woke up in the morning, I would remember to take them. Now that week, I had a really good week. I did not put 2 and 2 together at all. I was productive, I was on time, in time, focused. I was working as if I'd had medication, and having had medication previously, I knew what that felt like. I still didn't quite put it together. The following week, I smashed it again. Now, by the end of the first week, I hadn't chalked it up to the Saffpro, but after the second week, it started to make sense. The level of focus and drive, completing tasks, being organised and so much less overwhelmed and more emotionally balanced was insane. And that's when the penny dropped for me. As an ADHD professional with a decade and a half of lived experience taking ADHD medications, I knew what was happening. I knew that the dopamine and norepinephrine chemicals in my brain were being raised, and that this was in fact allowing me to tap into my executive function skills and use them at will, as if I did not have ADHD. But more than that, my skin was glowing, I was sleeping, and actually I'd stopped self-medicating. After 2 or 3 months of taking Saffpro, I stopped self-medicating completely. Now each gummy has 30 milligrams of Saffpro and I take 2 a day. To me, is just as effective as the ADHD medication I ever did, with none of the drawbacks or detriments. The 100% pure saffron gummies naturally raise dopamine and norepinephrine levels. One of the things that I've really noticed a beneficial impact in is because it raises melatonin levels, unlike ADHD medication that keeps you up all night because it's a stimulant. Saffpro actually raises the chemical melatonin, which is our sleep chemical. So it will give you the concentration for the day, but it will enable you to sleep at night. I can't even start to tell you how happy I am to have found Saffron and Saffpro. This is nothing short of a miracle for me. This product has completely changed my life. There is no way that I would be as productive as I am now. And not only that, it's super important to me that the lives of the people that I work with, both adults and children and young adults, are finding the same impact. We've had testimonials come our way from schools, teachers, parents, children themselves. Finally, we are in a position where, whilst ADHD is becoming one of the most rapidly growing diagnosed conditions, we don't have to have millions, if not billions, of people on this planet taking methamphetamine medications because there's a natural aid out there. We've had testimonials from teachers, parents. We're looking to implement this into rehabilitation services. We've had private psychiatrist practices reach out to us. Around the globe right now, people are reporting incredible stories about the progress that they themselves and their children are making. In this day and age, no adult or child should have to put amphetamine or amphetamine-based or typed products in their body on a daily basis to function. Thank you very much, Saffpro, for this gift to the world.